timely uptake of AI in science in Europe. The report was assembled by the working group that together with Professor Andrea Emilio Rizzoli, I had the opportunity to co-chair. And the working group members, Professor Arlindo Oliveira, Professor Paul Grove, Professor Patricia Martinkova, and Professor Karen Young, led the evidence gathering processes in the respective field in the interests of report. So the report starts with setting the stage, or sets the stage with the review of the presentation of the recent landscape of AI in science. And this research landscape is characterized by a strong leadership of AI research activities and infrastructure development by industry. So until 2014, the main machine learning systems were developed by academia, but in the last decade, the industry has taken the lead, and this gap between the industry and the public sector still widens because of the heavy investments in AI infrastructure that the industry does. So the result is that the main AI infrastructure is located outside the European Union, in the US and in China. And also this is the US and China which dominates the AI research globally. However, the European countries make significant contribution jointly. Nevertheless, the European Union has lost its innovation leadership due to low research and development investments. The evidence summarized in the report clearly shows that artificial intelligence is increasingly used across many scientific fields to support and not to replace the researchers. And these applications and the ways that researchers use AI vary from the analysis of the vast data sets through the literature-based discovery towards the advanced experimental, the advanced control of the advanced experiments. However, the evidence also suggests that the disciplines relying on the large amounts of data benefit more from applying the AI in science and in the research process. However, we also collected many interesting examples showing the potential of AI in digital humanities, for example. However, the uptake of AI in qualitative and theoretical research development are not yet fully clear, and they might develop in the future. And we also were not able to find the comprehensive evaluation, to provide the comprehensive evaluation studies on how the AI impacts the science system as a whole. Probably it's yet too early to have a kind of big picture of the AI's influence in general on the science system. Together with the opportunities, there comes the challenges as well. And one of the challenges is the lack of the transparency of AI models. And even if they provide useful output, it's sometimes very difficult to reproduce the decision process behind the output, hindering the transparency and hindering the reproducibility of the scientific process behind them as well. Also, the insufficient quality of data that is used for training AI models can significantly affect their performance. The performance can also be affected by biases present in the training data, which can skew the model's output, or if the data is not sufficient representation of the phenomena that the model aims to model, the results can also be not sufficient. The evidence suggests that generative AI tools can also be a means for spreading the misinformation, including the misinformation at scale. And this kind of tools can potentially facilitate to plagiarize the content, to violate the copyrights or intellectual property rights. And this can be misused by, for example, the paper mills and predatory journals. The evidence also highlights the inequalities within the research. So it seems that the popular mainstream disciplines receive more funding than some less popular but still very important areas of research. And also there is unfair appropriation of the scientific knowledge, because it seems that the industry leverages talents and leverages knowledge from the university, but holds the profits and hold the patents for themselves, simply limiting the access to compute and data. And what is also important to mention is that even though researchers increasingly use AI in their research, only few institutions provided provided guidelines for their researchers on how to use AI in their work. The evidence also suggests that the AI will impact researchers in everyday lives. However, the nature and the extent of this impact remains vastly understudied. It's probable that using AI tools will automate some scientific workflows, releasing the researchers from some manual repetitive tasks and leaving more space for creative research work. However, to fully facilitate this kind of transformation, the researchers need new skills and new competencies, so-called AI literacy and digital skills, understood mainly as the understanding of the principles underlying the AI models, the principles, understanding the limitations of AI models, ethical awareness, but also the ability to effectively communicate with machines, so that they can foster the creative work through human-machine collaboration. So having in mind the importance of developing this kind of competencies, several European institutions have already provided starting this kind of training on AI literacy. And universities are also employing this kind of trainings in their curricula. In terms of the policy design, the need for publicly funded structures to support the responsible uptake of AI in science also came up in the evidence review. Specifically, the need for publicly funded state-of-the-art AI facility that would provide sustainable cloud infrastructure, massive computational power, and repository of high quality data responsibly curated, available to the researchers and innovators from across Europe. And also this kind of institution could contain or could provide a scientific advisory and skills unit that would help in developing the best practices, guidelines, and protocols for using AI in science, including the discipline-specific norms, as well as develop and deliver appropriate training and skills development programs, so that the uptake of AI in the research could happen in a fair and responsible way. So this is a very short summary of this API report. Of course, the report contains much more detailed information that I could cover today. Therefore, I highly encourage you to visit the webpage together with presenting the full text of the report. So thank you very much. Thank you today.
Thank you very much, Anna. Are there any questions? Not sure I see any of. Maybe I can ask one question. So if you've shown the difficulties and the alarm, so things we need to be aware of, and of course we need to be educated. But in what ways can AI also help? So, for example, enhance the dissemination of scientific outputs, especially if you think for non-native English speakers. So, can we, yeah, what are the advantages there, and how can AI help there?
Well, I believe that using large language models for improving the output of the quality of the dissemination could be the way how AI could help here in presenting the results. Of course, I'm not, I highly disencourage using LLMs to produce the content. But once you have your own version of your text and it's not in English, large language models are very good in improving the quality of the text so that the grammar and the presentation is much better than in the case of the original version. So this could be the way the LLMs, large language models, can facilitate the dissemination. But of course, the ability for AI to improve the scientific process is much wider. One of the possible approaches is analyzing the large data sets. So especially in the disciplines where there is a vast amounts of data which are beyond the human perception, using this kind of tools can discover new patterns and new relations in much shorter time that it is required than it would be required for the researchers to do. Well, regarding the future, I can also imagine that using AI can provide researchers with skills that they do not have now. So this is what I observe being the computer scientist right now. In this particular moment, to develop your machine learning model, you need an expert in computer science who will able to code or provide the source code of your solution. But based on these LLM agents that support calling different programs, I can imagine the scenario in which the researcher tells to their virtual assistant, this is my data, please provide the model which will be able to predict something. And then the large language models generate the source code which does it. Of course, it's very important for the researchers to have those AI literacy in here to understand the process that underlies using this kind of model. But I can imagine that this kind of facilities and this kind of approach might be maybe in the future available for the researchers from different disciplines.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll continue and we have a longer Q&A later. So then next I want to give the floor, and we've known each other for quite a while, but I'm always afraid to pronounce your last name, so I'm going to try. Gabor Kishmiok. Gabor is head of the lab Learning and Skill Analytics at the TIB in Hanover. He's member of the Young Academy of Europe. He's action chair of the Researcher Mental Health Cost Action and leader of the Oscar Erasmus Plus project about the use of online AI-driven open learning recommendation framework and platform to support the improvement of key transversal skills on an individual level. Gabor, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for this kind introduction and for inviting me to talk here. It's a pleasure to be here, and I only have 7 minutes, so I only have time basically for two main points. So I want to, first I'm sharing my slides. That's important because I have a lot of slides to show you. I hope you can see my slides.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, perfect. So before I'm going to tell about these 2 points, which one is a risk of AI when it comes to doctoral education and doctoral careers, and the other one is an opportunity of AI, of using AI in the same area. Before that, I want to quickly say two disclaimers. One, we have very little data available about how AI impacts our scientific world, the world of doctoral education and doctoral careers. Okay, so this is something very important to think about. And the other disclaimer is that we are shooting on a moving target. So the technology is very new. It's quite likely that it's going to be a different technology in 3 to 5 years' time. Also, our educational system is adapting to this very turbulent world, just like our careers. So it's very difficult to predict. And this is what education is about a bit, like predicting how the world will look like in 5 to 10 years' time and start educating our society towards that direction. But this time it's very difficult to predict what will happen, what AI will do with our educational system, especially at the doctoral level. Okay, so we need to be super careful with our predictions. Okay, so let's look into my crystal ball and let's see what I'm seeing now. What I'm seeing is what Anna also mentioned, that basically the complete research process is already affected by AI, from ideation, from research ideas to execution and publication. So AI-based tools are already everywhere. And what we see that researchers started adapting very rapidly to this new working environment. And they have to do this to remain competitive. I find this data from OECD, and it's not about the researcher environment, but it's about high-skilled jobs. And there we see that high-skilled jobs are really impacted by AI, or at least this is what the OECD predicts. And there is a lot of uncertainty what will happen with these workplaces. 63% of the people thought, oh, I will enjoy my job more because of AI. But at the same time, 60% of them said, oh, I'm worried about losing my job. So what's going here? There is a lot of doubts and fears in the system at the moment. And also, as Anna mentioned, training is highly needed. We need training to develop AI. We need training to use AI tools, but we also need training to reflect on AI and reflect on the output of AI tools, to validate the output of these AI tools, which is a very important task. And for this, we need to develop technical skills, transversal skills, and also researchers and our communities need to have domain-specific skills to do so. So all these skills are equally important in this AI-driven world. And then here is the risk, what I see. What I see is that AI may push us to be even more productive and more efficient. But is this a good thing? Is this what we want? We already have a very high level of mental well-being problems in academia. And most of these problems are related to productivity. Most of these problems are related to being efficient and effective. Right now, what we see that 42, so 1/3 of our community is suffering from some sort of psychiatric disorder. We have data to prove this statement. So therefore, there are some bottom-up initiatives like the Researcher Mental Health Observatory, what I happen to chair of, which try to give some answers or give some ideas how to handle this problem. If you want more information, please visit the website of REMO. You will find there ample of information, data, publications whatsoever on this topic. But what I want to point out, if there is one paper you want to read about researcher mental health, please read the Researcher Mental Health and Wellbeing Manifesto, where this community basically outlined those major challenges what we have without AI in our system. And AI, as I said, it's a risk that AI will add to this pile of issues. But I also want to show an opportunity. I don't want to sound very negative. And the opportunity that AI, with the help of AI, we get really personal assistance in our work and in our research and in our education, which was not possible before. Because learning and working, especially in the academic environment, is really a personal thing. Probably you all had your PhD projects. You all felt that this is something only for you. It's your own baby. And this personal working and learning context is driven by a great number of individual goals, experience, and learning context. And this is where AI can have a benefit, because with the help of these tools, we can model these individual settings. We can start modeling these individual learning contexts. One example, what you may want to look at is the OSCAR project, what Monique also pointed out. And in this project, what we did was we were trying to use an AI-based learning platform to provide personalized learning content to researchers in training, mostly to early career researchers. And together with the usage of this platform, we also provided mentoring and coaching. So people could nicely develop themselves in skills related to mental well-being and career development. And then with the help of experts, with the help of humans, they could reflect on their own development. So this approach seemed to be super popular and successful. Actually, it's out in the open domain. So if you go to the eDuer platform, you follow this QR code, you will have access to all the content, what we developed in this project, and you can benefit yourself. So all the results are on the project website. The methodology is out in the open. The software is out in the open. Everything is out in the open. Another example, what I wanted to briefly mention, that not only in transferable skills, but also on research-specific skills, there are developments in the field. For instance, the Data Literacy Alliance in Germany, which are providing research data, are going to provide, it's in the making, they are going to provide the research data management related personalized courses with the help of AI. And my final thought is that we are living in a very turbulent world when it comes to AI, but I think we need to be brave, and we need to have our courage to experiment and reflect on how we are using AI and what we do with it, and be open and transparent at the same time. And then I believe we will be able to learn how to use this technology properly. And with this, I'm closing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gabor. I'm just trying to see if there are any questions in the chat, but I don't see them. So maybe I have a question. So you show some positive effects also of AI to enhance transferable skills, research skills, but you also mentioned, of course, the impact it might have on the pressure we feel, working pressure, that you have to be more productive. Did you, in any of the projects, or do you have an idea on how we can maybe think about institutional policies or practices that we don't let that last thing happen, so that we ensure that the mental health, well, isn't affected any further? Let's phrase it like that. So
yeah, so in Remo we talk a lot about this, really. So this is high on the agenda, and I'm also happy to report that one achievement what we managed to do there is to push the importance of mental well-being in the Charter of Code, which is currently being accepted by the European Commission and the European Parliament as well. So right now, if you're an institution and you sign up for the European Charter of Code for researchers, then you are obliged to take care of the well-being of your employees, and you are obliged to create working environments which do not harm the well-being and the mental health of the employees. I think this is very important. On the downside of the story, this is a success, but I always have doubts how these Charter of Codes are actually monitored. So there is no real monitoring system behind this. So one way we can see how institutions could improve their activities and way of thinking when it comes to well-being is really to start collecting data and understanding what's going on at their own context, because in this area, similarly to AI, there's no generic solution. There are context-independent solutions or context-dependent solutions only, I believe. And collect data and start discussions locally. I mean, this is academia is at the end about open discussions, right? Just do what you would do as an academic. Come up with a problem, try to measure it, discuss it, and think about solutions.
Yeah, no, we as universities should at least be a learning society, but it's not so easy sometimes. I'm also thinking about how to implement this in research career assessment with my other hat on, but we can come back to that later maybe. So let's first continue, and I would like to give the floor to Janet Francis Ravnar. She's Junior Center Director at the Center for Hybrid Intelligence in Aarhus University, Denmark. She's a researcher on human-AI interaction and co-creativity. She was formerly a US Fulbright Fellow and holds a degree in physics and studio arts. Janet, the floor is yours. You're still muted.
Whoops, there we go. Thanks so much. I am currently also now on a research fellowship at our Aarhus Institute for Advanced Studies on a program called Shaping Digital Citizenship. And I'm presenting today on behalf of myself and the Center Director for the Center for Hybrid Intelligence, Jacob Shearson, who I see has just popped on, so he may have a comment or two. Anyways, I'll get started because it's a short period of time. And first, I want to begin with a bit of an overview here. So why is it now that we're seeing this revolution with generative AI, with ChatGPT and all these other different tools? And so one explanation for this is that over the past, decade or so, or 2 decades, computer scientists have been working on refining technologies across all of these different domains: the handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image recognition, etc. And it's really been only in the past 5 years that these have reached the threshold of human performance, which means now we can build some very cool multimodal applications, which is what we're seeing. So when we look at this impact of AI on the future of jobs in research, but also in the workforce in general, we really need to re-examine the statements of technologists like Elon Musk here, who is claiming that there may be a future where no jobs are needed, that AI will be able to do everything. And either we believe that, or we have a counter argument to it. And myself and Jacob Shearson, others in our group, addressed this in a recent paper entitled Creativity in the Age of Generative AI, where at a high level, we commented that autonomous operating agents will certainly continue to astound us. But it's the technologies in the hands of creatives and business domain experts that will offer endless avenues of innovative potential. And that's really where our focus and our work lies. So you can see there's a draw towards this maybe dystopic, inevitable view that AGI can perform better on many tasks than many, if not all tasks, than humans. And I actually believe that that's probably right in the future, that there will be AI that can unaided perform better than humans on tasks. However, I think the much more interesting discussion is where we're having humans innovating with AGI and other forms of AI. So for that combination you can see here on the screen, it's a bit like the technology is an exoskeleton. And it's much less trivial than AI alone will be able to outperform humans alone. And so this gets into the discussion about human-centered AI, hybrid intelligence, autonomous AI, where the human is out of the loop. And in many ways, it's very positive to talk about the human-centered AI perspective, where AI is a tool for the human. However, if you focus only on this, you risk talking about innovation and missing the disruptive potential, because you build the tools for tasks you have now, today, instead of looking towards a future workflows. And so with hybrid intelligence, we really want to combine a sense of disruptive potential of autonomous AI with the human control that's so well presented and focused on in the human-computer interaction field. And in addition to this, many computer scientists, Anna, maybe you have a comment on that too, the computer scientists really hold back from putting an ethical dimension onto the technology itself, where we at the Center for Hybrid Intelligence and with this label of hybrid intelligence are really trying to incorporate that for something to be hybrid intelligent, it needs to have a positive impact or be focused towards a positive impact on an individual, organizational, and societal level. So many organizations are looking to transform to AI, and building on this perspective that Google spearheaded with this AI first mentality, to put AI into every part of the workflow and benefit from that. It's proven successful in some ways, but there have been a lot of problems. For example, de-skilling. So employees losing ability, certain skills that they had, or not learning future skills. It's become a widespread problem. Also, a failure at the implementation of the AI tools at the deployment phase. And so I think that instead of focusing on this AI first mentality, to focus more on an HI first mentality, which is combining the power that you would have with AGI with the human augmentation and human control. And so here's just a quick video from Palantir.
The military operator responsible for monitoring activity
to give an example of a very complex in and out relationship between humans and an algorithm.
AIP leverages large language models to allow operators to quickly ask questions. Show me more details. They ask what enemy units are in the region and leverage AI to build out a likely unit formation. What enemy military unit is in the region? Our operator requests additional imagery to build a more complete picture of the potential enemy equipment on the ground. Task new imagery for this location at a resolution of 1 meter or higher.
So I won't go through all of it in the interest of time, but I think that regardless of the application here, of course, it's military, but the position where you have very complex tasks where the generative AI is going to be able to be providing you with information and providing you with questions and have this continuous loop between the human and the algorithm is going to be prevalent in all forms of tasks. This is just another example of how you could use it without this super fancy software that Palantir is developing. This is from a previous talk from the center. We're using a tool called Perplexity. I don't know if anyone has tried it. Much better than Google. I use it all the time now. So you begin by asking a certain question here. How is generative AI using? Then the co-pilot comes back to you and asks questions that you can then refine what you're looking for. And then it provides all of the links and references to those links so that you can go in specifically and look for the various pieces of information that you want. And then what you can do is you can take this and construct it together into a workflow for any particular given task. And so when you want to look at how to do this and drive this sort of entire workflow transformation, I think it's really important to consider not just the question that many people ask, which is where should I apply generative AI in my workflow? I think it really can be applied anywhere, but how can one do it? In that case, it's good to think about particular problems with respect to prediction and to judgment. So our machines are very good at predicting, but it's only you who knows the context of your specific situation, and to be the very best one who can provide a judgment on a topic. So I will go rapidly here, but I think that when we discuss now academics and many different people building in generative AI into a workflow, imagine in a student case, a ninth grade student or a university student's writing an essay. Here they may use they do idea generation, outlining, writing, drafting, evaluating, editing. If you give them suddenly a button that says, once you have the outline, click create, and then you get all your content, will they spend that extra time going and making better outline, better idea generation, iterating on it? Probably not. So we really have this issue to combat with the laziness. So how do we deal with that in an educational component when we have these possible tools? And so given a task, an outline, and a number of different flows, it's important to ask yourself at each phase in the process, how will one be co-creating with the tool, and in what ways can we improve workflows and to build in incentivizations and features that help to promote upskilling. Okay, so for us personally, we work with lots of different universities and companies, foundations. And from all of this work, we've tried to compile a framework for change management for generative AI. And we have compiled lists of challenges and opportunities. But the key aspect I want to focus on is that now everyone is sort of aware that they should be using Gen AI. And that it's an important, valuable skill, but not very rarely is there awareness that they should also be innovating with Gen AI. So they should actually be co-creating the tools that they're using. And it may seem very difficult to think about in the beginning, tackling a very complex task where you're supposed to also innovate with Gen AI. And so we've created a scale, here you can see innovation scale, where you start with very small aspects, like from nano to micro, mini, and to a full-fledged area where you're using off-the-shelf tools, nano, just using GPT asking questions. At a micro level, you're adapting your own prompts, etc. Co-building the system that will best help you. I think I'm out of time. I have a couple.
Yes.
I just slotted in a couple more slides in respect to the comment that Anna had earlier about using tools for communication. So that's something I can talk about later, not just producing content, but if anyone has questions about that, how you can use Gen AI in various areas as well.
Yeah, so maybe we can come back to that later. Yeah. Thank you very much. Again, I don't see any questions. Yeah, I mean, one of my questions was, but you alluded to that a little bit at your final slide. So how can we scale researchers? I mean, students, I guess we have to somehow embed this in our teaching programs now. But how can we scale researchers to work with AI well? You clearly emphasize this interaction and co-creation, but we need to be taught how to do this properly.
Yeah, I think it's not just the concept of teaching people how to do it properly, but at a much higher level, fostering a culture of innovation, fostering a culture where the faculty and students feel free to innovate with these tools in their work. So on one hand, you can do webinars, you can do seminars on prompt engineering, you can do all these different things. But I think that you really need to have that culture and dialogue. So we often present the difference between the AI first dialogue and an HI first dialogue. An AI first dialogue, very simply, is, wow, look at this really powerful AI tool. This is what it can do. Whereas if you're talking about HI first, then it's, wow, look at this powerful tool. What are you doing? What phases in the process can you benefit from that you want to use tools? How can it help you augment your work? And to really work on that dialogue and support researchers in feeling comfortable innovating with Gen AI.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you. I'll leave it at this for now because we have one more speaker. I would like to introduce Mike Theodorescu. I hope I pronounced this well. Mike is assistant professor in the Information School at the University of Washington. His research and teaching interests encompass machine learning, fairness, technology innovation and adoption, intellectual property and entrepreneurship. He has degrees in business administration and computer science and has worked in the computer industry sector as well as government. And I think it's very early in the day for you, but thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yes, I'm calling from the West Coast. It's about, well, it's now 6 a.m., but joined a bit earlier than that. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure participating in the working group earlier last year. That was mentioned by my fellow speakers here. And I know it's we're running a little bit late on time, so I'm going to try to compress this and try to get this done by the top of the hour. So hello everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk a bit about the impact of AI in the workplace. And this work, I started working in this space 2017, 18, and one of our earliest reports was with MIT D-Lab, was funded by USAID on the sponsored project. And this particular report was on kind of like fairness criteria and early uses of fairness criteria and machine learning international development. So we have case studies in different areas. But today I'll talk about this working paper at Brookings that looks at determining systematic differences in human graders for machine learning-based automated hiring. And automated hiring, as you may or may not know, is getting an increased use by many companies now. So having a bit more understanding of how this works is helpful. So why companies are automating the interviewing process, there are a number of reasons for that. One is, of course, financial. It takes time and money, especially people, away from performing R&D or other specialized tasks in order to conduct hiring interviews. And hiring is essentially a hard and expensive task. So if there was a way for companies to automate that, they would look for such solutions. There are a number of companies that do software for this. And I'll talk about one application example. At least in the US literature, we look at protected attributes based on the US federal law, and I know there are some similarities with the new EU AI Act as well. But essentially, we're trying to make sure the software does not discriminate on personal immutable characteristics. And personal characteristics or sensitive attributes like race, religion, national origin, gender, marital status, age, veteran status, and others. The default criteria for a while in machine learning fairness was this concept of fairness to unawareness. Essentially, if you drop out predictors, the predictors that correspond to these sensitive attributes, you should be fine. But as was discovered a little bit later, redundant encodings, i.e. being able to reconstruct sensitive attributes from other variables in the data, or correlations in sensitive attributes and other variables in data, kind of nullify this approach. So this doesn't really solve the problem. So another criterion that's fairly straightforward is demographic parity, group level fairness. So essentially, let's say hiring decision is independent of the protected attribute. And this is fairly easy to apply. The number of toolkits and R, Python, and so on that use it. Equalized odds becomes a little bit harder because now we're actually matching the true positive rate and the false positive rate for different values of the protected attributes. So think of different categories within each protected attribute. And we now have a system of equations trying to optimize, which may not have a solution, right? And as we dive deeper, there are over 20 fairness criteria in the literature. As we dive deeper, we find that sometimes we're actually not able to satisfy a criterion like this one, which would be a higher bar of fairness and demographic parity. So you might see more limited approaches like equalized opportunity, which really only looks at the true positive rate. Now, the complication of using automation for fairness is that a human may have to choose which fairness criterion well, we have to choose which fairness criteria to deploy, and also what is the bar for equality. So you might not get strict equality, you might have a margin of error, say 5% or 1%. Also, group fairness might be simple to understand, but it's very hard to actually practically satisfy for more than one protected attribute. I've done some work here, and theoretically impossible for 3 group level fairness criteria at the same time. This is the work by Chorchova and others on the impossibility theorem of fairness. So in the kinds of hiring, we actually looked at, let's not try to fix the problem ex post, so not after you've already trained the model, but let's try to resolve potential biases or systematic differences in the training set itself. So what we did for this study was we proposed an experimental setup to determine the systematic differences in interview graders before they actually they make a decision that results in a training set that results in a potential preference or bias in the model. We use a number of scales that are well known in the literature: trust and feelings, cognitive tests like numeracy scales, maximize versus satisfies, and others. Last one you probably have heard in other forms, like, are individuals likely to hurry and just seek like an acceptable outcome, or do they take the time to deliberate and seek the best decision for themselves? The literature, others in the literature have been proving these to be useful for much longer than I've been in the field. So I'm just kind of taking these scales and applying them in experimental setup. And each individual grader, before they actually give a grade to an interviewee, ends up having to go through the process of answering these sets of questions like this one. We also looked at demographics of graders, and if there's any interaction between the grader demographics and applicant or interviewee demographics. We use a test version of a tool called AutoView by Aspiring Minds, who was a partner for this research. I have 2 co-authors who are industry co-authors from that company. They provide us access to a test version of the tool. AutoView basically uses a structured interview approach, which takes into account many different aspects of an interviewee when they perform this automated interview. For example, they use a number of facial features during the interview. They use NLP features like they extract from the speech, they do the speech to text conversion. Then features like word embeddings, sentence embeddings, n-gram counts, and the cosine similarity of response, and so on. So we've done 2 studies, one in the US and one in India, and wanted to see if there were any differences between the preference of the groups, how they perceive warmth, engagement, knowledgeability, confidence, expressiveness, positivity, strength, fairness, emotionality of candidates. We've generated a few thousand data points on prompts like these. So you would see a video or an audio or a text response of a candidate, and then you would grade their hireability on a number of these criteria. And this is an example of the results we found. We actually found, I don't have enough time to go into detail on each of these variables, but the important part of this table is that there are differences that are statistically significant across a number of these preferences, like, for example, trust and feelings, and that these differences differ based on the group of graders, and where, well, essentially you see national differences in preferences in addition to interaction effects. So what in kind of like high-level view. There are differences based on where the graders are based. So these might be cultural differences. We did not see any difference between the video and audio in likelihood to hire, which was interesting. High school GPA did not matter for hiring after college, which maybe seems like a good thing, that college helps kind of equalize the playing field. And the models that we ran were linear regression models with cluster standard errors on applicants and variance of the models with interaction effects. Now, knowing these preferences that graders have ahead of time before the actual tool, the machine learning tool is actually using the training data from these graders, helps us to potentially counteract these preferences by essentially the tool the ML model could reverse these preferences or account for them. Of course, in a lot of this literature, ground truth remains elusive. Interviewing is only a proxy for performance on the job. It's not necessarily a measurement of performance on the job. We do not know necessarily what happens to interviewees after they take this automated test. And we need to do more research on integrating personality tests in the process of vetting or determining graded preferences before the training set is actually built for an ML tool. Currently, we're looking at how users of AI perceive the fairness test results of an automated tool, and we're trying to establish a standard for fairness. In related work with a colleague, Professor Markidis, we have another paper at Brookings looking at standards versus regulations in machine learning, and we have a number of other papers that kind of cover different aspects of literature. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. I don't see any questions at the moment, so I do have a question, and you related to that a little bit in the type of things you included in your question. So in the recruitment process, does AI lead to bias, or can you somehow train AI to, well, we know in recruitment processes, biases of the people in the panel are a huge issue, but how does AI prevent this, or is there also bias in that process, or how can we?
There's a very large question.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not quite sure how to formulate, but I think you understand.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I'm doing right now, because that's kind of a very large topic to take a bite out of. I'm doing work on different subsets of that problem. So, for example, I have some work on speech technology and bias in using speech technology, or what could cause bias in using speech technology. I have done some work on augmentation, so essentially human ML tools. So decision making. Who does the final decision? Are you using the tool, the ML tool, as an aid, like one of the earlier panelists mentioned, so like the LLMs would be an aid, and then you make a decision as the say HR person, or are you delegating that responsibility completely to the AI? And I would argue that for certain decisions that are for of socioeconomic importance, like hiring, admissions, and so on, or credit lending, the final decision should not be of the AI, but should be a decision of a human employee of the company who's making that decision. There may be situations where the AI might detect bias in the human decision-making population, but there will be a different use of it, kind of like analyzing the data and finding, as opposed to as an aid. Most of the work I've done is looking at AI as a tool to make a decision, as opposed to kind of like finding issues with decisions made by human decision makers. But those are pretty large problems in literature, and I think it's a fairly large problem that you need to, at least in my space, I take like smaller data sets of, say, one credit lending data set or one firm data set, and then I dive deeper into that. I don't have generalizable insights necessarily at this stage.
No, okay, clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it is time to open up to the participants, although they were welcome to submit questions before, but now we do have a question from Asli Telly, and well, I assume it's a his, but I'm not sure if I interpret the name well. So how can researchers work in an interdisciplinary fashion with AI? In other words, how can we better address conventional disciplinary boundaries? Yeah, anyone of the panel who wants to comment on that? Yeah, Janet?
Yeah, I mean, I can make a quick comment there. I think that with the ease of use of many of these tools, the interfaces that have been designed for accessibility, I think that it's much easier now for those without technical backgrounds to be able to, at least at a very low stage, like a prototype stage, to be able to create the prototype or prototype of a tool that they want to use for, whether it's data mining or scraping, or whether it's creation of something. And so I think that there's going to be a lot more opportunity, as talking about the innovator aspect of it, not just the user, but innovator, a lot more opportunities for a broader population to engage in that early stage, whereas previously there was so much reliance on those who are heavy technical skills to be able to create the prototype. It can be very hard at the initial stages of a project to really understand how the technology can be used. And so I think it's going to be very empowering for researchers outside of technical fields to be able to, at the beginning, already go online or go into some of these co-creative tools and test out possibilities. That's not saying that you don't need the engineers or you don't need the computer scientists to make to make it happen at the end. But I think that the communication will be much better when the end user researcher can get their hands on some prototypes or prototypes much earlier on in the phase.
Yeah, and it might even generate novel questions, I think. Yeah.
Exactly.
Gabor is also unmuted, so yeah.
Yes, a little bit of a different perspective. Like, I guess all of us participated already in interdisciplinary projects. And okay, my experience that oftentimes these projects can be quite uncomfortable because you suddenly have to talk to people. You have no idea about their fields and their backgrounds and what do they say. You have to trust them, right? So in an interdisciplinary project, when suddenly a partner from another discipline comes to you, you have to learn the vocabulary, the terminology. You have to trust this person a lot. So you can start working together, and that takes time. And in a way, I feel that working with AI is something very similar. You have to take time to understand what the AI is telling you. You have to take time to understand, to come up with a common language, a way to communicate. If we talk about AI agents, chat agents, or communication agents like ChatGPT. Now, this prompting is all over the place. Like, it's a very important thing to do. It's very important, but for me, prompting is a clarity exercise that you have to basically put your words and your wishes and your questions in a very clear way to get a proper question, a proper answer, sorry. So I think, in a way, for me, at least, working with AI in this interdisciplinary domain is not very different than what I experienced so far. Of course, it can be, as also Jen said, it can be far more efficient. It can solve problems very quickly, what took a number of months, years. But still, this process of being on the same page, that I believe it still takes time.
Yeah, and it's kind of a an additional discipline. I'm looking at the questions because there are some questions coming in now. Do you think AI can be supportive to countries in developing countries or in developing regions, like in Africa? So how if and how AI can be supportive to the more developing countries? Anna?
Well, so maybe I can handle this question. I think that yes, AI can be supportive in such a case. I can imagine the scenario in which, for example, healthcare, some methods for diagnosis are applied. We can, of course, say that the diagnosis based on AI or on developed algorithms is not as accurate and has some limitations compared to the diagnosis provided by the doctors. But if the doctors are not available, providing this kind of support can be better than none of the support or none of the healthcare provided to the citizens. So I think this could be one of the aspects when AI could help in such a scenario. I can also imagine AI helping in agriculture. So for developing the technologies that can, let's say, optimize crops and assist sustainable farming, improving the results of farming in hard conditions. So this could also be the way how AI could help in the developing countries. I believe that maybe in education and filling the gaps, also some AI-based personalized tools could maybe at least partially facilitate the lack of tutors. So these are my very first and my very fast responses to this question.
Thank you. Gabor, you are...
I would like to pick up on education because this is like my primary field, using AI for education. And actually, I'm working on projects which try to do that. So for instance, the software I showed in my presentation, the eDoer software, is about providing education with the help of AI to areas in the society globally or locally where high quality education is not available. So we developed algorithms which are capable to collect information from the internet and make it available for the local context through a quality controlled way. So actually there we can benefit a lot from this type of technology, but still the humans need to stay in the loop for the time being.
Yeah, thanks. Another question from the participants. How can EU stay relevant in the artificial intelligence race beyond just the Brussels effect after having lost the lead to the US and China in the Gen AI revolution? A big question, I think. Is there anyone who... Anna?
Well, so maybe I will try. It's a very difficult question, how to fix it. But I think that well, the first important issue would be to increase the investment. So what we saw in the report and what I said also today during the presentation is that the European Union lost the leadership in the innovation because of not sufficient investments. So I think that increasing the investments for the research and development could at least partially facilitate to keep the pace and increase the funding would be helpful here. Also, the problem that we saw when collecting the evidence was with talents. I think that it is very important to provide a kind of incentives for the researchers to make them stay in Europe. And this also somehow partially relates to the fact that Europe lost its leadership and the talents. We can observe the brain drain, and the talents are leveraged by the industry. So providing attractive career incentives providing the opportunity to perform the research that, well, is not necessarily driven by profit, but it is important for the society, could probably be one of the actions. And also, I think that this is also something that was that came up in the evidence review, is relates to these incentives and relates to the ability to assure that the innovation is in accordance with the ethical standards. So maybe it does not necessarily happen in the industry. We have a lot of concerns related to what kind of data were used for training, whether they indeed could be used for training in terms of copyrights and intellectual property rights. So I believe that providing a kind of opportunities, ensuring that the research is performed in the ethical way, along with the increasing of investment, could be one of the solutions.
Yeah, I also have a quick comment on this. So from my perspective, and also the perspective of the Center for Hybrid Intelligence, is that hybrid intelligence is about creating value, not necessarily through data or even focusing too much on the technology, of course, utilizing it, but focusing on the experience of the individuals, so in the employees or the students. And there's such a great potential for Europe to be developing these human-centered solutions, because there's a culture around that as well, a culture of value for employment, for education. And I think that by focusing on that, we actually have an advantage or edge, but certainly something to run on.
Sorry, I was muted. I'll give the word to Mike first, and then Gabor.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to add to the previous question a little bit, which was the regarding whether or not ML can help in developing context. There was an experiment by a colleague at Harvard by the name of Rem Koning, who has done work on actually an experiment of giving access to an LLM tool custom trained on a national business data set. And that was given to different business owners in Africa, and actually the tool was helpful in getting them to perform better. So I think if kind of like whether it can be used, it would be if it's customized on a particular business data set or other specialized skill data sets. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor.
So I have the feeling that sometimes Europe tries to answer everything with regulation. So if we are afraid of something, then we try to regulate that something. And this may be the case in AI as well, which may put us in a follower role rather than a leader role. I often have the feeling that we are here in Europe, maybe we are not brave enough to experiment with technology. And I think maybe if the EU or member state countries can really be a bit more courageous and try out many different applications. Of course, somehow there should be an ethical, I completely agree that we have to have our ethical boundaries, but like a bit more courage. I would welcome that. I give you one example. So we are developing this educational tool. Once the new AI legislation goes through, this educational tool will be a high-risk tool. That means we will have to go through enormous amount of paperwork, and my institutions would face like millions of euros fine in case we do something wrong. So people at the management level simply they will not take the risk. It's a very high. It's going to be a very high risk business, which means slowly we have to withdraw. We cannot really push this agenda forward. I consider this as a risk, and I would really motivate people to be a bit more courageous when it comes to experimenting with data.
Okay, thanks. In view of the time, I want to finish with one question a bit looking forward. So what would future research careers look like if we've spoken a little bit on how it might affect pressure, mental health, assessment. I think that's an important one as well. But if we think ahead 20 years, how will research career, and there are many other aspects, I'm sure, which will influence research careers, but how will AI influence research careers looking at the future? Is there anyone? It's a big question as well, but Gabor's laughing, I know.
20 years?
Well, yeah, that's what it says here. Let's maybe do 5 or 10 then first.
Yeah, so I think we will really have to put more effort on going back to the basic values of academia, like discussion, being open to each other, creating a climate where we can really sort of reflect on what's going on around us. Because oftentimes, and this is what I see in the mental well-being discussions, that we are losing this kind of stable ground. And if we are losing this stable ground, it will be very difficult to handle a technology which can be autonomous at some point of time. In some cases, it already overperforms us. If we are not able to really to create this working environment where we can reflect and come up with proper controls, then this can be problematic.
Yeah. Anyone wants to add? No, then maybe it is a good time to close. I mean, it's 5 minutes till the time is up. So, well, maybe what I take away is well, clearly, thank you very much for the evidence review report. Everyone can see that online. So if you go to the SAPEA website, Stephanie also shared the link. But if you Google for it, then you should be able to find it as well with all the data in there. So both the evidence review report as well as the advice. I think what I take away, but I hope you will take away, is that we have to fix this AI illiteracy, maybe. So we have to educate our people. And responsible use is what is an important one, which came back a lot of times, but also that it's still a new technology or discipline or however you want to call it. And so we need to learn also, collect data, learn and look at the effect on all the different parameters we discussed. But in all topics, all questions we raised, always comes back also dialogue and communication. And what Gabor said at the end, it's about, well, what are our basic values, especially in university, we're learning environments, but a lot of people, there's not a lot of trust anymore. So we need to trust each other to have these safe conversations and to talk about this. What does it do? Well, how does it affect? And how do we want it to affect us in our careers? So this co-creation, which then it's also referred to, how do we work together to lead to new science and new innovation? So I think it was a very nice panel discussion. So thank you very much for all the contributors, for all the speakers, with all your different experiences and different angles to the same topic. I wanted to say issue, but that's not the right word. It's a new topic, it's a new discipline, and there's a lot to learn. So thank you very much also for all the participants for joining, and we hope to see you again soon at a new webinar or maybe at another occasion. So thanks everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
And thank you, Monique, for organizing this. It was very nice.